Hey, this is Blake from Exceptionless, and I wanted to give you the weekly update for April 10th, 2017. We've had a lot of activity in the past week, and so I kind of wanted to just cover it. First of all, we've accepted a pull request for a mailkit from Kaylin and Edward, and we're going to continue testing this and get this deployed. This adds support for basically talking to any mail server. So that's good. Finally, next, we added a lot of support to try to figure out our metrics for pipeline and plugins, like exactly how long they're taking. And we added the ability to automatically remove plugins based on configuration or pipeline. So now we have better insight. So you can see that we have, we can get all these stats like, how big is the post coming into the API server? This is before it's rejected. We look at the content thing, and then we can get the time in milliseconds it takes to get data from blob storage. So this is the max of the maxes. So you're looking at across all of our instances, and message size, decompress, etc. Average batch size. But here's where it gets interesting. So we're looking at processing time and then pipeline timing. So a pipeline, so you can think of it as a series of plugins that gets ran against the deserialized event, and we do stuff server side. So we can see exactly what actions are happening, and we can remove them on the fly. So you can see that there's work to be done here. So we're going to continue on that over time. So that's kind of interesting. It's giving us better insight into the system. So I just kind of wanted to show that off, and that's one of the big things we did. Here's the work that we did for disabling plugins on the fly. We basically look at the configuration and say if it's enabled or disabled. Part of that, we noticed that there were some issues with the plugins, and we did some work to ensure that it's much more performant, and there's still work to be done there. We're thinking we're going to do a second stage pipeline for any progressive enhancements to events. We need to get the events in our system as soon as possible, etc. This we did more improvements here. If you're interested, just go look at the commit for pipeline performance improvements. And here's some more. Another thing that we did is we were always loading the Exceptionless client before, and now it only happens if you specify an API key and server URL. This is only useful if you want to debug what the Exceptionless server is doing itself. So by default, it shouldn't be enabled unless you specify an API key. So now this is less work that's happening on startup, and a win. So we also had many improvements to Foundatio this week. We noticed that there were issues with how we were doing copying files in using Azure Blob Storage. So before we were streaming it to disk, to the current app, and then re-uploading it, and that's a lot of work that we shouldn't be doing. We should let the server side handle it. So the server side now handles streaming, like files between locations, and so that's a lot less work that our app has to do and a lot less memory. So that was a win. And we also identified an issue where the FolderFileStorage, the copying files wasn't the same behavior, like it was throwing an exception. So now we handle that correctly. So that's another pretty big win. Also, part of this is we noticed that our delete by wildcard for the Redis cache client wasn't working. When keys did not exist, it was throwing in an error. So now we fixed that, and it's a lot better. So if you're using Foundatio, you might want to update to the nightly builds if you're using the remove by prefix contracts. Finally, onto the Exceptionless.net client changes. So we merged all the CS project changes and removed all blocking issues, and with that we released 403. We highly recommend upgrading to the latest client especially if you're on .NET Core, because we added new .NET Core implementations, fixed a lot of issues with ASP.NET Core. For one, you couldn't submit any data to the server in the new .NET Core app 1.1 on the full framework. They kind of broke the system.net.http client, and so we resolved issues with that. So yeah, check it out. Update it, as soon as you can. Then we also had some awesome, pull requests for the UI project this week. So Kaylin submitted 2 pull requests. One was for tags now wrapped in new lines. So basically, if you have a very long tag list, it was just going off the edge of the screen, and now they wrap in the UI. So it looks a lot better. Also, he fixed an issue where, like, you say like you had a column, like the users column, and you had a very long email address, like a couple hundred characters. It was like causing it to go multi-line and then instantly back to a single line, and now it's properly handled in the template. So you'll just see, the UI won't be jumping all around, and it's much more intuitive and great. So we greatly appreciate that pull request. Finally, onto the Foundatio repositories. We did some simplification and bug fixes here. Some more work was being done to reindexing by Randy. I think that'll be merged in soon. One of the big things is you can previously, if you were using caching, you had it anytime you specified cache key, it was enabling the cache. Well, you might not want that behavior, so now it doesn't happen by default. You have to use one of these overloads to say use the cache and here's my cache key. So that's a nice little improvement. Also, we greatly simplified the index creation for time series based indexes. We had a lot of defensive checks in there from the Elasticsearch 1x, and we just didn't need to do it. So we got rid of some distributed locks and a lot less checks, and so it should be a lot more efficient. So we're really happy about that. In other news in the repositories, we are going to be probably creating a final 1x release and merging in the Elasticsearch 5 changes here, in probably the next week or two. So that is all the changes that I have for today. That was quite a bit of stuff that happened last week. So stay tuned. We have some more changes. So awesome. Thanks.